How are you guys doing? This is Martin from Gardens for Life in Birdland Homestead. We are now entering our 13th questions and answers session. And if you're listening to this on the audio only afterwards, we are also going to be running a few banners as well, but I'll mention what they are in audio as well. So we take questions, anything from homesteading to gardening, growing food, preserving food, chicken keeping for egg production, and home brewing, country winemaking, anything you'd like to ask, business, how to start a business too. And just leave your questions in the comments. And we do these Q&A sessions every Thursday at 9 p.m. GMT, so Greenwich Mean Time. It's important to mention that time zone because some of you are not based here in Ireland, or even indeed in the same time zone. So we'll just hang in there for a few people to join. We have some people coming in now, and we already have a few questions actually lined up to do with chickens and eggs and feed as well. So I'm going to talk about that. I was actually just running a course on how to keep chickens for egg production here on site, and it's actually suitable. It's very suiting. Is that the word? No, it suits me perfectly fine that we have some questions related to chickens now as well. So let me just take a look here. Well, we might as well get right into it. So I have a question here. How do you stop raspberries from spreading from the roots? Well, they do spread, and I found that raspberries are pretty much the most weedy plant there is among in our gardens, especially for a cultivated plant. It is so weedy, as in it spreads so quickly. But what I do is I keep it anywhere I plant raspberries, a specific variety usually. I plant them in a patch where they have a bit of space around them, just to spread a little bit. They do clump somewhat. They kind of grow maybe a foot or two away from the mother plant every year. But if you plant them somewhere with extra space around them, all you have to do is harvest them back, as in just take some of the plants up that are growing on the path, for example. But I would do that in the winter time if you can, unless it's in the way during the growing season, then you have to get rid of it. But in the winter time, then you can either pot it up or just give it to somebody or trade it with somebody or sell it. So it's handy to get a surplus of raspberry plants. But if raspberry plants ever show up randomly in your garden, just wait and see to check if it's a good variety, because sometimes it is if it's grown from a seed. Usually birds will plant them in your garden, and it can be quite thorny as well. It's probably going to be closer to a wild raspberry rather than a cultivated variety. It's a 50-50 chance you have if it's a raspberry plant that's grown from seed. Apparently strawberries are much better like that. They do stay much more true to their original mother plant. But raspberries, how do you stop raspberry from spreading? Don't plant them. Same as Jerusalem artichokes. I mean, you could put in a root barrier if you really wanted to, as in just take a spade probably and just dig into the ground and just make an area, maybe a square meter or two or more, and just put some kind of a root barrier in so that the plants can't spread via a root rhizome. Actually, if anyone in the audience here knows whether you would call a raspberry root a rhizome, please let me know. I know mint does, but I think anywhere the plant actually starts rooting, as long it's sort of like that anyway. So raspberry runners are very similar to other plants like mint, like that, and they spread by seed and by roots. Not tip layering though, and that's one thing they don't do. Unfortunately, raspberries are also quite hard to grow from a cutting, so I prefer just growing them, letting them spread basically, and then taking the extra plants that are not grown in a desirable place. So please let me know if you have any questions about homesteading, gardening, food preservation, growing, especially this time of year now. We're getting all the no-dig gardens set up now. Our new garden is finished. For those of you who haven't seen the newest episode or even the series of how to start or starting a no-dig garden, I have a 7-part video series that I just put out over the last few weeks of how I started a garden, basically smothering the weeds, dumping the compost on top, doing your layers, and just planting it up and doing the paths. So all of that, those videos are all available on our YouTube. I believe they're also on Odyssey as well, for those of you listening all over there. We are still not streaming live to Odyssey and Rumble, but Twitter is online and Facebook is online for those of you who are still over there. Please give us a thumbs up. I'd highly appreciate that. That'll hopefully help the old algorithm to spread our video to a few more of our own audience, especially. So let me just take a look here. Thank you guys for joining. So again, for those of you who have just joined, please ask me any questions you like about homesteading or gardening or anything related or business in the comments or in the chat. So let me just take a look here. So I have another question here about eggs, actually. Particularly, let me see here, about feeding chickens. So one thing is, where do you get organic grains or feed for your chickens? So any farm shop will sell, or at least order it for you, organic layers pellets. You can give them to them, and that's a complete food that includes calcium as well for the egg shells. If you're only feeding them grain or oats like we do mostly, you have to give them some kind of a calcium substitute. So what that means is basically crushed oyster shells will do the job perfectly fine. And you can get those in a 25-kilo bag for about €15, I believe. So I think it's usually €50 for 2 bags, including postage in Ireland. And that's from freewaypoultry.ie, I believe it is. And Freeway Poultry has crushed oyster shells, so you gotta do a search for them. And 1 bag is enough for 20 chickens for 6 months. Just to give you an idea, you dump out the whole bag into your chicken pen, and the birds will just instinctively eat whatever they need for their eggs. So a lot of animals are like that. They just know what to eat and self-medicate too, including calcium for the eggshells. How about that? So let me see here. We tried actually getting rolled grains, and we didn't have a great experience with them. They went moldy very quickly, and I thought it was a bit of a waste. I think the organic layers pellets are only dated by about 3 months or 4 months in advance. So that means they have a best before date, 3 months from when they're sold, which is not very good for grains in particular. You'd expect them to last for at least a year, even if they're rolled or pelleted, for that matter. What I would say is I would substitute the chicken feed with some greens that you're growing in the garden, like kale, for example, or weeds or grass. Give them access to a bit of a garden or a bit of a field, or even if it's just a lawn where you no longer really mind them scratching up the ground. I like to use the chickens for something called chicken tractoring, where you simply move the electric fence on, maybe even the coop as well. You can make mobile, and then you can simply move them onto a piece of ground where you want to make a garden in the near future, leave them on it for about a month or 2, and then move them over, and then you have no more weeds there, and they've scratched up the roots as well, and they've fertilized the ground. So it's ideal for starting a new garden. You just dump compost on top, and that should take care of it pretty much. I mean, you still have some weeding to do, but the chickens will do most of the work for you in advance. And that's the slowest way, by the way. You can also use black plastic to smother the weeds, or you can use cardboard if you want to get it done straight away and get started. I've done a lot of that, and in the videos you'll see the effects, especially the first one out of the playlist. You will find that smothering the grasses is more of a long-term process, and I'll get you a link for that video series here now. So we have another question here. Does the feed actually affect the quality of the eggs and the flavor? I would say it does. The eggs from the shop are not very good, in my opinion. We haven't bought eggs in the shop. We think we bought eggs once, 5 years ago or so. In the last 11 years, we have never bought eggs, only one time in the shops. And we didn't need to, because even in the winter time, we had plenty of eggs available from our chickens. Any time of the year, especially, just bear in mind that if you want to keep a ready supply during the winter, which is when you want the eggs the most, kind of, because there's less available in the garden as well. In the summertime, birds always lay more eggs, of course. Even if they're bred to lay eggs one a day, they still lay more eggs in the summertime, because that's when it makes sense for birds to lay their eggs, especially ducks and any kind of birds, I guess. Even chickens. We haven't bothered with quail since. Quail eggs are just too small and hard to peel, and chicken eggs are perfect. Basically, duck eggs are arguably better. But the chicken feed definitely makes a big difference, and the fact that the chickens have lots of space in our backyard to run in their pen, and they do definitely benefit from that. The eggs have a far better consistency, better flavor, better nutritional profile as well. So I'll just give you a link here on the comments for the No Dig series, the playlist. Now I've posted that comment there. If anyone would like to see how to make a no-dig garden, if you want to get an idea, there's a little introductory video series that is available for free on YouTube or on our website. And I'll just give you the latest one if you'd like to see. The latest video is here also. I'm just posting a link on the comments. If you're watching this afterwards, you'll have to go back into the comments and check there, or just look for it on our website. So again, please, people, give me some questions. Anything to do with plants as well, any kind of plants, like insectaries, like flowers, vegetables, fruit, berries, whatever kind of questions you have. Let me check here. Do different chicken breeds produce different flavors in the egg? I don't think so. I really don't think there is any difference. It's a bit like different varieties of a fruit. Well, in fruit it's more defined, but even different varieties of a particular vegetable, like a carrot, is there really that much difference in flavor between the different varieties? A little bit, and some of them store better. Oca, for example, some of the other vegetables from the Andes, oca, mashua, yacon, I found very little difference between them other than the color and the shape. So same as chickens, sometimes the shape is different, most of the time it's the same, but in general it's probably mostly just the breed of chicken is more about its behavior, its characteristics, how many eggs per year it lays. But I wouldn't get caught up on breeds. We've had almost every breed that's readily available, as in terms of point of lay chickens. So chickens that are sold as ready to lay eggs, as in 4 or 5 months old. We've probably bought at least 10 different breeds over the years, and there's very little difference between them, other than maybe the color of the eggs, but there's no difference in flavor when it comes to that. Now, do you ferment grain before feeding it to the chickens? We do not ferment the grain, but I heard that Jack Spirko on the Survival podcast in Texas, actually, he used to have a duck egg business, and so he has a little bit of a farm there going and a homestead, and he used to sprout seeds before giving it to the ducks. So apparently that makes a big difference. I don't remember if it was actually grain or barley. I maybe even a bit of both, but I know that definitely sprouting them, not fermenting now, but sprouting them will definitely make them nutritionally better and make it more available to the chickens, so that even the ducks, so that they can digest it easier. I bet you fermented grains would be very good for them too. Not sure if they'd like the flavor of them, but they'd be easier to digest, I imagine. And then again, you, Michal, here asking the question, you probably know more about that than I do, because I know from talking to you the last time at the last seed and plant swap, you know quite a bit about fermenting foods, which we have not done yet. So the only thing I've fermented is wine and barley, as in beer, make beer, and cider as well, apple juice, I guess. But not foods now, not yet. So let me have a look here. So we're definitely answering a lot of chicken questions here today. Again, if you guys are listening to this afterwards on the audio, or whether you're watching this on any kind of platform afterwards in video form, and you have some questions yourself about any of the topics that we usually cover in our videos, for example, or on our website, just go to our website, and you'll find every Thursday you'll find the new next live session. You can click on notify me in order to get an email when it's actually out, when it's starting, and then you can ask your questions or just email us to contact@garantsforlife.ie. So let me take a look here. How are you doing, Bianca? It's a pleasure to have you in the audience. I've already been answering a few questions about chickens and eggs and feed and all that. So there is so someone here saying, hi Teresa, saying, hi Martin, I grow potatoes in pots. If they show flowers, is it wise to take the flowers off or let them produce top? Well, that's a very good question. I've let them flower before. Actually, I don't think it's any harm. I've never seen anyone picking the flowers off in order for the plant not to use some of the energy it has stored in the potato under the ground to make the seed, because it does actually make seeds, and they look like green tomatoes. Actually, that's what comes out of the flower. And then that's at that point you definitely realize that they are indeed related to the tomato. So apparently you can grow tomato and potato. I know it's unrelated, but I'd like to say it anyway. It's because I actually saw a thumbnail of a video the other day, a potato and a tomato grown from the same plant. It is apparently possible. I would say, like the alliums, that if you let any plant go to flower and let it go to seed, unless you're collecting those seeds for a reason, like breeding the plant or replanting them, I don't think it's worth letting it go to flower. I'd nip the flowers off. But do you have time to do that? Like, how much more yield can you expect because you're picking the flowers? These are questions that need to be answered, and it'd be very interesting. Maybe I'll do a patch of potato. I guess it'll be next year at this stage, right? I have some potatoes grown, but some even that were planted several years ago, they're still growing in the same area, and they're still doing pretty good. We do like eating them, all right, but I just, as crazy as it might seem, I know for some of you that are not familiar with our gardens, we have about 2 acres of no-dig and back to Eden forest gardens, some around our house and some off-site. And I kind of like to say, I don't really have the space for potatoes, even though we love eating them. The thing is, though, we just have so many other things to plant, and we just need to get things in the ground at this stage. I have other root crops that are going in. Oca, Mashua, and Yacon are going into the new no-dig garden. And the links that I posted in the comments earlier on, for those of you who just joined, there was the links I posted is to do with the playlist. It's the playlist of the how to start a no-dig garden from scratch, basically, smothering the weeds and adding your layers of the compost layer, making the paths and all that, and planting it up. So if you'd like to know more about that, you can check those. And all the videos are, of course, available for free. We have 330 videos now on the Gardens for Life channel. Not saying that to brag, but I'm saying people can go back and check what has worked for us and what hasn't. And definitely I have a no-dig potato harvest video on there too. So if you type potato into the website or the channel, you'll get it there. And you can take a look what kind of yield we got with almost no work. We also didn't heal them as well, as in we didn't mound them, the potatoes. And we still got a good yield. I think if you don't mound them, the bottom potatoes, the original potatoes that are grown, will grow bigger. Otherwise, you get lots of little ones on top. And that's what I found with ocas anyway. With other ocas are quite similar to a potato, really. Although it's a completely different plant. It's actually an oxalis. And it does not suffer from blight. So that actually makes perfect sense why the potato and the tomato happen to both get blight. Why are they both the one plant that happens to be the most susceptible to blight? Well, because they're one and the same plant. Kind of like brassicas, as crazy, I still can't wrap my head around this. Brassicas are all coming from the one plant. Apparently it's the sea kale from northern France. And so they were breeding cauliflower, broccoli, cabbage, all the brassicas. If you can think of any other, kale, of course, they all came from the same plant. And apparently, actually, I think it's the kohlrabi also comes from there. And the Brussels sprout as well. So Brussels sprouts are, I can't understand how you can get all these different shapes and forms and flavors all from the one plant, just through selective breeding. Over how many years, I don't know. Here's a question for you. Do I grow garlic? We do grow garlic, not so much regular garlic, but mostly elephant garlic, because it's just, it's easy to grow as small regular garlic, and it's much milder. We do like the old spice of the regular garlic too, so we grow it. We have Isle of Wight, and we have purple morado grown now. But the elephant garlic is a kind of plant that is robust enough to withstand the competition in the garden, and the competition is fearsome. Not just the weeds, but I'm actually taking care of those now. I've been doing a lot of weeding lately, and I'm cleaning up the gardens. Last year's neglect is almost cleaned up, and the elephant garlic is about the same size as the rest of the plants, about a meter tall, or about 3 or 4 feet. So it definitely is about adequate in the garden, in between the flowers and the vegetables. Also, it keeps the old carrot root fly away. Garlic is great like that. Any onion, any allium. And did you know that alliums, actually, all garlic comes from leek, or they're in the leek family anyway. And they look very similar too, except for the elephant garlic looks like a leek, all right, but it's kind of so big that it looks like a corn plant. Garlic is easy to grow. You can also grow garlic perennially in a forest garden situation, or a back to Eden garden, or a lasagna garden. There's all these different techniques that exist. It's very basic and very simple, really. All of them are the same. Lasagna and forest garden. Well, lasagna gardening, all it is you're putting a layer of wood chips, a good thick layer of wood chips of about 10 plus centimeters on top of your no-dig garden. Cover the entire garden, not just the paths. And then you're going to end up with a forest floor, so to speak. You're simulating a forest floor, but bear in mind that when you do that, when you turn your no-dig garden, which was just compost basically, and a sprinkle of wood chips on the paths. If you cover all of your garden beds and all your grow spaces with wood chips also, I'm not too worried about the wood chips robbing the nitrogen. That's not really the issue, especially if you don't mix the layers. What I'm more worried about is, and I've observed this over the years in the many gardens that I've set up, many little gardens and adding on. Every year we add on several new gardens and bits and pieces here and there. I want to show people that it can be done bit by bit, one piece of land at a time. And so what happens is that the soil turns from a bacteria-based environment, like a nitrogen-rich environment, like the compost, into more of a carbon-based environment, as in fungi. So the soil life changes, and acidity is not the problem. Acidity, or the pH, ends up about the same. Excuse me while I take a drink of water. Jesus, talking gets you fierce dry, all right. So you got to bear in mind, if you're growing greens, for example, and you want to keep growing greens in a particular area, or annual vegetables at all, you're better off to leave it as no-dig. Don't bother covering the whole thing with wood chips, and stick to the no-dig gardening instead, because you have to really replenish fertility in the form of a bit of compost, maybe an inch per year. I dump a wheelbarrow on top and rake it out, and just to feed the soil life basically for the whole year. And you can do that any time of the year really, but practically speaking, it's better to do when there's no plants in situ, because you don't have to work around them. Now, Chris, how are you doing? Thanks for joining again. Have you ever grown potatoes through seed? From the seeds inside of the berry after it flowers. I'm doing it this year. The genetics are amazing. Yellow, white, and purple tubers. So I have not grown potatoes from the seeds, but I'm a big fan of using any potato to regrow or actually plant out there. I don't bother with seed potato much. I just use whatever ones, organic ones now, from the shop. And whatever ones we don't eat and they sprout, I just plant them in the garden. I don't bother particularly worrying about the variety and whatever. I mean, okay, there is the difference between flowery and soapy, but don't really like to call it that. But I think one thing we wanted to do is actually get some seeds of the original potatoes that are from the Andes and grow those. They're much smaller. They look kind of like a cross between, I guess, an ullucus and oca, for those of you who know those vegetables. And they're all kinds of different funky colors and shapes, and definitely much smaller than our modern potato. All the newer varieties, I think they're probably more prone to disease, such as mildew. Is it mildew or blight? Same thing, right? I'm no expert on blight, to be honest, because I haven't had blight. We rarely ever had blight. I don't think, I actually literally don't think we ever had blight, other than on our pumpkin plants, for example. But that's normal. It seems pretty much towards the end of the life cycle, let's say in September, you end up with mildew on your leaves of your pumpkin plants and on the courgettes. But on the potatoes, or even the tomatoes, not really. Haven't had that issue now, but I believe that potatoes that are more or closer to the original potatoes from back in the day, especially from the Andes, all those original varieties, they're going to be a lot more disease resistant, I'd say, even compared to any modern variety. Or maybe it's not an issue where they're from, where they come from. Like, I think it's Bolivia. There is a museum, a potato museum, and they actually keep all those varieties still going in the Andes, and they have 4,000 varieties of potatoes. So that's interesting. There is a website where you might be able to get potato seeds, but I don't know what it is, Chris. But it's something worth looking up. I think it's the guy that wrote the book, not Eric Tonesmeyer. I think it's, if you just do a search online, you'll probably find it handy enough. But I'm not sure if you can get them imported. Now, have I got another question here? Elizabeth is saying, hello, Elizabeth, how are you doing? Thanks for joining again. Hello, Martin. Can you get a second crop of strawberries? All of mine have already finished. That's a good question. We actually grew strawberries in crates before, like the supermarket plastic crates with compost, and you plant them basically in early spring. And the best answer I have for you is you can grow other varieties that fruit later. You can have some that fruit earlier and some that fruit later, and you can stretch the harvest that way. I don't know how long of a harvest window you can get, but from the same plants, you will not get a second crop unless they're, what's the name for that? Can someone help me out? The when a plant keeps on fruit, everbearing. Everbearing strawberries are not as good, some people say, in terms of flavor and yield, but they will produce berries for longer, like maybe a couple of months or 3 months or something like that. But ever-bearing berries, it seems kind of like a chicken laying an egg every single day of the year. It's not really practical, I don't think, to the plant itself. It's very straining on the plant. And I think you're better off to get more natural varieties that just build up their strength and then produce all of their fruit in a few weeks. And preserving strawberries, well, I guess, freezing them and thawing them is not great. But again, it's all about living with the seasons. We just different times of the year, different times of the summer. Myself, Bianca, and our son Jacob, actually, we're looking forward to eating all the different crops from the garden. Like strawberries, not so much anymore because they're a good bit of maintenance. We found, I mean, mainly you have to have fresh plants every year, but I planted some into the wood chip island, for those of you familiar with that garden, and that is a lasagna garden, and it worked fine for 2 or 3 years. We had loads of strawberries. Growing them on the ground, though, they go moldy very quickly. In crates, you kind of have to keep them in pots or containers. Buckets or crates work fine too. Again, I haven't really had the time to be investing into strawberry plants and growing strawberries. But I do appreciate them, and if we can find some locally, we will definitely buy them. Actually, Bianca, if next time we're in the crockery, we should check for those strawberries again in the petrol station. They were real. They were not from some big factory operation. Now, let me see here. Does anyone have any other questions at all? By the way, Elizabeth, just to let you know, raspberries are our preferred choice now because raspberries are easier to grow, but they are a bit weedy in the garden, all right? So we plant them into the corner of the garden or other places where we don't mind them taking over so much. They produce 2 crops and they're kept well off the ground. So if they fruit during a dry time, like the beginning of summer, for example, our raspberries are growing now, we should have a crop maybe at the end of this month, at the end of June, and another crop sometime around the end of September. So that those are prima cane. So they produce fruit on this year's cane and again on the same canes next year in early summer. The early crop is usually lost mostly to the birds, and the late crop, it's hard to get a September when it's not raining non-stop in Ireland. So a lot of those berries can go moldy. And of course, if one gets moldy on the bunch, the rest of them do too, before they even get ripe sometimes. So actually, a friend of ours in Westmead has grown raspberries indoors in an open tunnel. So in America, you'd call that a hoop house because it's only just basically stopping the wind and stopping the rain. And that's all it does. It doesn't, and it's, of course, it's warmer, but you have open ends or no doors at either end. So that's actually basically the same concept of what we have in our big greenhouse in the big garden, because we just haven't bothered putting doors into it, but it's actually more practical not to, because it would get too warm in there. But we don't really need it, only for the winter or even late growing season, when I'm using that greenhouse and it's too cold. And in the beginning of the growing season, it'd be nice for it to be warmer, just to start seeds and things like that. And it would also stop it from drying out so much. But you know, if you don't have doors in your greenhouse, the wind can blow through it, so that means it won't blow away as easy. But the other problem you're going to have is, the upside is no mold because you have a lot of ventilation, and the downside is definitely a downside. It dries out so quickly, and our soil has dried out to the point where it is aquaphobic, I believe it's called. It doesn't even take in water anymore. The soil structure is just not there to hold on to the water. So, but slowly but surely, I'm getting there now. I have our kid, our son Jacob, going around with the water hose and the pump. The pump is actually on the IBC tank outside that's gathering the water from the gutter on the side of the greenhouse. And we have a hose going in then with a pressure switch, and then we have him just watering the entire middle of the greenhouse just to hydrate it again, hydrate the ground. And he has a great time doing it. Keeps him busy for half an hour. I get to actually do other stuff then. Now let me see. Hello, Kevin. How are you doing? Well, thanks for coming back. You're welcome to ask any questions you have. I'm doing very well. I've been very busy this week, so I've already finished planting up the other no-dig garden that I made a video series about, the Starting a No-Dig Garden video series. I might actually rename it to How To instead of Starting. And I'm just working on the next one now, next garden. Have we ever grown pumpkins vertically? You can do, and I'm very wary of pumpkins actually hanging down off this thin vine that's only like half an inch or a centimeter thick. And the pumpkin could be several kilos, and I'm worried about the pumpkin coming off the vine before it's ripe. So no, I do not grow them vertically. I believe you can do it, and I believe there is no need to worry about the pumpkin separating itself with the increasing weight towards its ripening. But I think I'm going to make a video actually tomorrow for you. I posted up on the website, hopefully tomorrow or the next day, about how we grow pumpkins. You can also look up the pumpkin video. Let me check here. So the way we grow the pumpkins is very simple. We just grow them at the edge of the garden, same as Michael Pilarski. He has some videos on YouTube too, and he's a brilliant gardener. And he grows all the pumpkins on the edge of the garden so that the pumpkin vines can grow out from the garden. So cover the weeds, basically, cover the grass, and all of that suppresses the grass because it's casting a shade, but also it uses otherwise unutilized space. And what I do is, let me just give you a link here. I have a pumpkin video for those of you who may have seen it 3 years ago, October 2021. And I'm going to just post a link here in the comments or in the chat section to that video. And if you like, you can watch it and check out how we grew. I didn't actually count them. I think about 200 Oshiki-kuri pumpkins, all with very little effort. It was basically just, I think I may have put in 5 or 6 hours of effort into planting. Starting the plants probably extra 10 hours so to grow these pumpkins. And I sacrificed a bit of space, but what I do is I plant them at the edge of the garden, the no-dig garden, and then I simply direct the vines towards where I put down black plastic on the weeds beside the garden, and then the vines can climb onto the plastic, and they're safe enough there, and they have no competition, and they can put on, they love the heat, of course. The black plastic sucks in the heat from the sun, and probably reflects it. The ground reflects it at night too. But most importantly, the pumpkins are using space that is just kind of not being used to grow anything at the moment. So I'm doing the same thing this year. Finally, I'm going to grow some pumpkins. Last year I tried 2 different sets of seeds, didn't start. So I didn't end up getting it done last year. But this year I have about 35 pumpkin plants or 40 pumpkin plants in the ground, and hopefully they'll all cover that area of plastic from both sides. So I'll make a video about that, and hopefully we'll be seeing pumpkins in the gardens. And this year I'm growing Oshiki-kuri is one variety. Our favorite is a Japanese pumpkin. It's small. It's only like maybe a kilo or a kilo and a half or so. But that's ideal because you don't want to end up with a giant pumpkin that you can't eat it in one go, and you don't want to have to preserve it. It's easier to just grow smaller pumpkins that are more flavorsome and a better texture, and they store better too because they're drier, so they're denser. The watery owl pumpkins, they do go off quicker, all right. I think it seems like water or moisture actually attracts mold. So let me just see here. Now, let me know if you have any questions about growing food or homesteading or business or winemaking or chicken keeping or anything else that you may have seen me talk about previously. We're 41 minutes into this session now. We don't have to keep going for an hour, but the longer we keep these going, usually the more people we have joining. And I don't like to cut them off. I don't like to cut it off early while there is people watching. I do appreciate you guys actually being here and listen to me rambling on about all different various topics. And you can choose the topic. You can tell me what you'd like to know more about. Anything that we do, anything that we're known for. I guess gardening is our main thing, but one thing I'm going to be talking a lot more about is that's actually kind of probably going to write a book about this, seriously. How to transition the garden. The way I'm doing it now is from no-dig to perennial forest gardens, basically. So there's kind of, I always have like kind of a 3 or 4 year life cycle in that. I can give you a quick overview if you like. So especially for those of you not on the visual, on the video, if you're listening to this on the audio afterwards. So all there is to it really is you smother the existing vegetation, same old thing with the no-dig gardens. You put down your compost layer and you grow whatever you want to grow. For example, first year, nitrogen-rich soil, bacteria-based, 6 to 12-month-old mushroom compost, minimum 3 months old, of course. The longer the better, the older the better the compost is. And if you take your compost layer, in the first year, it's ideal for growing annual vegetables and greens. And so what we do then is we put a bit of wood chip on the paths, and we usually inoculate those wood chips with mushroom spore or that type of thing. Mushroom spawn, for example, wine cap or king stropharia is ideal. And that actually is, it benefits all of the plants as well. So the plants, what's the name for it? Well, the wine cap actually attaches itself to the plant roots and supplies the plants with what it needs. And in return, it gets sugar produced by the plant using photosynthesis. So that's a bit of a little bit more advanced there, but it's as basic as adding a bit of white sawdust to your wood chips, as long as the wood chips are fresh, and it should work. In the second year, then what I do is usually in the first year I would also plant a few perennial flowers in between just to protect our crops because it brings in all of the beneficial insects. In the second year, this is a bit of some people might call it a bit of a thing. I just keep planting perennials in between until there's no space for annuals. Third year, probably cover the whole thing in wood chips because the weeds might take a hold. Maybe after the second year, I'd say, in the winter, you could cover the entire space with wood chips. A good thick layer if you want it to last for a few years, and without having to top it up, that is. And after that, you can also plant some fruit trees in between. So we don't do canopy trees in Ireland because there's just not enough sunlight for that. Because you're looking at capturing the sunlight on all 7 layers of the forest. You can look that up too, if you like. That's actually, you can get a diagram of it. All it is canopy trees, lower, like fruit trees, for example, soft fruit, apples, plums, pears, or whatever. Even nut trees could be considered canopy. Would that be nut trees? I guess walnuts eventually will become the canopy if you plant them. It'll take a very long time for them to do so. And you got the herb layer, you got the roots and the climbers and the shrub and the ground cover. So all these different layers in all of the, basically all the gardens turn, as I said, the first 3 years in the life cycle. And then after that, it's all going to be forest gardens with small fruit trees interplanted as well. And lots of berry bushes. Some patches of Jerusalem artichokes here and there because they make for great wildlife habitat, but also food security as well. So those could be harvested anytime during the winter, in any consecutive winter after planting. So even after the first year, we actually never we never harvest all of our Jerusalem artichokes, but we kind of contain them by harvesting on the outside first, kind of where the paths are. So that contains them very well, and it's not a problem. As I like to say, if an invasive, it's not really an invasive plant, but the word invasive has been abused so much I can't even say it. If an invasive plant is edible, well, isn't that kind of a good thing? So, like the potato. The potato is invasive. Did you know that? But sure, you can eat it. Just let it grow and eat it. So Kevin is asking here, I make a nettle tea, but have been wondering about adding other so-called weeds to make a more diverse feed. What do you think about that? So you could add other grasses. Won't work, I don't think. There's too much silica in it to dissolve in water. I don't think it would work properly. I think you're talking about, well, nettles, of course, but I believe it has to be nettles that are not going to seed yet. I don't think you should use nettles that have where the main stem has gone black. For some reason, you cannot eat those. They've become toxic, and I'm afraid that toxin may affect your plants also. So that's an important point about making compost tea out of nettles. But comfrey leaves work really well. Either just comfrey leaves on its own or nettles will work fine. But if you mix the two, that is all the better, simply because the comfrey is actually a mineral accumulator, and it has a deep taproot, and it gathers minerals from deep down in the ground, much deeper than any fruit tree can reach, as a matter of fact. That's why in permaculture, they often plant comfrey patches around under fruit trees and then just do a chop and drop with a scythe or with a sickle. You can just chop the leaves and leave them there, and then that feeds the fruit tree. So you're bringing all the minerals to the surface. But as for nettles, I don't think they can reach down that low in terms of minerals, but they are a nitrogen pig, which means they eat up all the nitrogen. If you have nettles grown in your garden, you're going to find nitrogen-loving plants will be invited. So nettles are just one of them, and Jerusalem artichokes is another. But they don't go to seed here in Ireland, so because the season is not long enough, and the Jerusalem artichoke is only really propagatable, if that's a word, to buy tuber, for example. But then you also get the variety that you started with, so that's handy. Yeah, no. So just to sum up that answer, Kevin, about the compost tea. So all you do is, just for those of you who don't know what that is, all you do is you take leaves, for example, nettle leaves, and the stems too, and comfrey, one or the other, or both, and put them into a barrel of water or into a bucket of water. Just stir it once a day. I think you leave it in there for 3 or 4 days, maybe longer, maybe a week. I don't think it's really necessary though, until it smells really bad, like kind of fermented, I guess. You strain it and you water your plants with it, and that's liquid feed for free. You don't have to go buying chemicals in the garden center. Just make your own. I must make a video about compost tea actually. But we don't use compost tea at all. That's the thing. With no-day gardening and lasagna gardening, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to do composting. You don't have to do compost tea. The fertility is all imported, of course. I'm not trying to keep that a secret. I do buy in compost, but if you ever couldn't, you could use liquid feed like compost tea. No problem at all. But I mean, the kind of gardening we do is a very lazy style of gardening, and some of you might think that's awful funny, but because I've got 2 acres of gardens to look after, pretty much on my own, it is pretty much pushing me to the limit, and I don't need another thing to do, like feeding them liquid feed. I think if you keep topping up the wood chips on your lasagna gardens or on your Back to Eden or forest gardens, those are the areas that you're not looking to grow annual vegetables in. So those are kind of on the periphery, probably, in terms of permaculture. For those of you who are into permaculture, it could be zone 3, I suppose, and beyond. So places where you don't go every day, but you still have plants there that are very productive, like berry bushes, rhubarb, fruit trees, all kinds of perennial flowers, valerian, echinacea, great mullein. What else do we have in the gardens, people? All those culinary herbs, Mediterranean herbs too. Rosemary, oregano works. Thyme sometimes doesn't. So the idea is that the wood chips actually get broken down by the soil life from below, and they get eaten up, especially by the fungi, by that mycelium that's the root of the mushroom, of the wine cap mushroom, and the mushroom actually breaks it down and makes it available both to the soil life, and the bacteria in the soil life makes all the nitrogen and other micronutrients available to the plant. And of course, the plant is attracting all those bacteria from around the area by putting out root exudates, as in sugars, out back to the root zone, to the soil, and attracting all the bacteria. The bacteria eat some of that sugar, and they live and die and reproduce and do all their things, and they provide more nitrogen to the plant. So it's all a cycle. So I've got a couple other questions here, James. Thanks for joining, James. And thanks for asking questions. Please, people, don't be shy. Please ask us any questions you have. I'll answer your questions next, James. We might have time for one more after that, and otherwise you'll have to either email me, contact@gardensforlife.ie, or you can come along to the next questions and answers session next Thursday at 9 p.m. GMT. Do you grow perennial onions? Yes, we do. We have potato onions, which are the best one to grow. We almost lost them last year, so we're not going to make those available on our website. But we do have the Egyptian walking onion, which are also a really nice one. Let me see here. We have an allium pre-sale at the moment, actually, and you can get 10% off everything on our online shop. Just do garlic 24, and that's available for now in the next week or two. I just want to let you know that we also have elephant garlic available there too. And Orphrey is actually a really nice one. All of them are perennial. All the garlic is perennial too. You just got to nip off the scapes in midsummer, just to make sure that they don't go to seed and spend all of their energy that they've stored in the tuber, in the root actually, or in the bulb. So the alliums actually, the bulbous leek is called Orphrey. And you can also watch 2 videos actually about Orphrey on our website as well. If you haven't seen the latest video yet of the, let me just check here. Of our allium, or all the perennial onions and garlic as well, and perennial leeks as well. I'll just give you a link for that. Oh yeah, this morning I put up a video of our baby rabbits as well. We had some baby rabbits born a few weeks ago, and I had to make a video because they're so cute. But the link is for perennial onions and garlic that I just put on the chat there. Again, for any of you that are just joining now, I have time for one more quick question after this. And where do I buy bulk wood chips? Well, that's easy. You just call all of the tree services company or arborists in your area and ask them, next time you have wood chips, would you ever have some? And some of them might even have some during the summer. If you want to use them for the paths, you're better off to get them in the winter, because if there's leaves in it, they'd mulch up entire trees, like branches and even needles, like as in the leaves of a pine tree, can be in it also. It's not a problem. It doesn't add acidity after they've gone brown, but if you have leaves, if you get wood chips in the summertime, I found that they break down an awful lot faster. And that can be a good thing if you're looking for fertility. But if you're looking for material for paths and for areas in the garden that you'd like to sit down in, for example, if you're looking to just simply block the weeds from growing from an airborne seed that might land in your no-dig garden, well then the wood chips you get during the winter time are definitely better. Although in the summertime, if you get softwood wood chips, as in pine trees or lelandis or whatever, they will last longer. They last for 3 years, I found. But if it's hardwood, I found it only lasts for 2 years. So that's something to bear in mind. I could make an entire video just about wood chips, and I have some videos there. Just type wood chips into our YouTube channel or Odyssey or on our website. Now, let me see here. So Harold is asking, I've had problems with my tuber plantings. Can I still get a harvest if I replant? That depends on what kind of tubers you're replanting. Not sure about potatoes. I'm going to probably, I have a few that are chitted actually that I'm going to plant. If you're talking about mashua, that's very forgiving. Oca can be sometimes a trouble with the rodents, as in the rodents love the oca because it's probably nicer to them than potatoes. And I'm only planting the ocas and the mashuas now, and the yacons, because they're all not very frost hardy, especially the oca and the yacon. Those are all root crops, but they're not, the foliage of the plants are not frost hardy. So I have to plant those after the last chance of frost. I would say 1st of June to be safe, some people say. Local market gardeners say, when do you plant your pumpkins, I said, and he always said 1st of June. Don't take a chance. Like mid-May, I took a chance one time and we had a frost. So it can happen. You don't want that to happen to, let's say, all of your oca plants. That would not be a good thing. But don't worry, sometimes they just get knocked back by the frost and then they come back again. Yeah, as in Harold, I don't know what tubers you're talking about, what particular type of tuber, and exactly what the problems are if they're not growing. But I don't think it's too late to plant them now. You can still plant tubers now, especially if they've been either chitted or if they're already in a pot and grown into a plant, into a little seedling. I like to start my Oka plants in half-liter pots. I actually still have some of those available on the website as well. Very few Mashua plants left now. They're going to be all planted, the rest of them. And yakons are all sold out at this point. But as I said, like the onions, all the perennial onions and garlic and leeks are available now. And you can get those on our website. You also have, for those of you local to us, we have workshops always running. We usually run them maybe once a month or so. So we have pressure canning, how to grow food using no-dig gardening, plant propagation, the garden forage walk, country winemaking, and a chicken keeping workshop just for eggs, not for broilers. So if any of you guys are local to us here in Roscommon, or if you're within an hour, it might be worth checking our website and take a look at the videos about each of these workshops. And you can get to that on this page here, events. Gardensforlife.ie/events. I thought I'd throw in an old plug there for our workshops. So, thank you guys for joining our live questions and answers. It's been 1 hour and 1 minute. Time flies. Let me take a drink of water. I'm out of water now. That water is so good when it's filtered. We're now using spring water that we get at a local spring here in Knockrockry in County Roscommon. And we filter it with our British Berkfeld filter. And it makes it definitely taste a lot purer. And it's not just, it's definitely not just in my mind. It is, I think it may remove some of the minerals too, but that's okay because we are also eating sea salt as well every day, so there's no problem with minerals. So I definitely recommend you filter your water and get a good water, get a good water filter like the British Berkfeld, for example, or make your own. You can use food grade buckets and a regular old ceramic filter that you can get also. All right, folks, thank you very much. I will see you the next time. Bye-bye.